the destruction of the entire planet isn't supposed to be fun. Maybe it's supposed to be terrifying and unsettling.
Please don't do that.
And you should stay up all night, every night, crying when we're all 100% for sure gonna die.
I just saw 2021's Don't Look Up, directed by Adam McKay. This is a review. So Adam McKay's comedic career goes back all the way when he was a writer at SNL. After leaving SNL, he linked up with Will Ferrell to create some of the most memorable comedic movies in recent memory, like Anchorman, Talladega Nights, and my favorite, Stepbrothers. So Adam McKay already has this kind of comedic signature style where a lot of the scenes are very much ad-libbed. He takes this really kind of relaxed approach when it comes to his comedy, where he films everything that's supposed to be written down on the script, but then lets the actors kind of do free range afterwards and kind of create what they think would be probably better takes. And from all that kind of experimenting, there's a big grab bag of kind of like amazing scenes that probably wouldn't be in the movie if it wasn't for that kind of approach when it comes to his directing. He soon started to transition towards more kind of grounded dark comedies, and one of the biggest ones that he did, the most famous of the first, was The Big Short, which was a movie about the 2008 housing crisis. Now on paper, how you make that funny, I'm pretty sure the execs at the studio weren't really thrilled with him kind of taking this approach, knowing the kind of comedies that he did before, a surefire kind of formula. So he really took a leap when it came to kind of directing what he's kind of well known for now, is these really dark kind of satire comedies about society as a whole. Soon after that, he directed the movie Vice, which was a biography about Dick Cheney, another ridiculous character that was, grounded in reality, but the movie is really farcical and hilarious in terms of how they depict this man who was in such a huge seat of power and his kind of approach to life. Now, with the success of Succession on HBO, I'm sure that Netflix just cut the check and let him do whatever he wanted. And Don't Look Up was this next project. So the movie is based around this huge comet that's coming barreling towards Earth that's going to wipe out all humanity, and pretty much how society as a whole would react to such a thing happening when it comes to our politics, to our media, to the public itself. In the cast, we have astrophysicist Randall Mendy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. We have Kate Dibiasky, played by Jennifer Lawrence, who's the comet's named after. We have Cate Blanchett, that plays Brie Eventine, one of the anchors in this parody of Good Morning America. We also have Meryl Streep, who plays the president, who's a combination of kind of Trump and Sarah Palin. She does an amazing job playing this egocentric president. There's so many more in this movie. There's Kid Cudi, Ariana Grande, Chris Evans, Ron Perlman, Tyler Perry, and one of my favorite characters in the movie, Peter Isherwood, played by Mark Rylance, who is this rich tech billionaire who has a little bit of Elon Musk and the baby raised glazed look of Mark Zuckerberg. Leonardo DiCaprio plays this amazing, anxiety-riddled scientist who's just trying to tell the world that we're all going to die, but to no avail. He does an amazing job playing this character that at literal times I felt like I couldn't breathe either. It harkens back a little bit to the movie The Aviator, where he plays the billionaire playboy Howard Hughes, and in that really famous scene where he just wants to look at the blueprints. I remember watching that scene and really feeling like, wow, is that what it really must feel like when you start losing control of your mind? Another mention that I want to talk about is Jonah Hill's character. He does such an amazing job of just being this complete douchebag, but super self-aware of what he's doing as well. He's not playing it as this dude who's just a dummy. He's literally just a scumbag and he knows it. But he's in a position of power, so who cares? Some of the best scenes are where they're trying to get their voices heard, and as much as they try, they just are getting brushed aside or completely just ignored because they're not trending. So they get upstaged by the likes of Ariana Grande and Kid Cudi, who are going through this kind of tumultuous romance and get back together while they're trying to tell the world that the planet is going to end. In that scene, I think it's a microcosm of the reception that this movie got. It's currently a 56 on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not really doing so well, but it's a 77 when it comes to the audience rating. So there's this really distinct parallel where a lot of the people do genuinely like this movie, but it's also not being well received. And a lot of the complaints are that it's a little bit too much on the nose. But as a satire, that's what it's supposed to do. Or more or less, this is an allegory more than anything. And like any good allegory, there's a lesson to be learned at the end of the film. Now, I think this movie does a really good job at this balancing act where it's not trying to be too preachy, but it's also trying to deliver a message that it thinks it's important. A huge reason why Leonardo DiCaprio was attached to it is because of this. When I first saw it, I thought it had to do with COVID and pretty much what's going on in the world currently. But that's kind of the genius of the movie. Insert comment with anything else, an alien monster, a disease, a volcano, it all still plays out the same. But in interviews, Leonardo DiCaprio talked about that this movie was talking about climate change. And he's really passionate about it in his personal life, so it makes sense that he wanted to be attached to this movie. So when it comes to filmmaking, the hardest thing to do is to make sure that you deliver a message, whatever it may be, and at the end have the audience feel what you intended, whether it be frustration, sadness, anger, or happiness. And this film managed to do a little bit of all of them. Now, while the title of the movie is Don't Look Up, it's very much in the forefront of this is happening, this is coming, we're all going to die, why isn't anyone listening? But I think a lot of the genius that happens in this movie are the little scenes or the subtleties that happen throughout. They're really kind of hammered down exactly the world that these characters live in. One of the funniest scenes to me is in the beginning when they're waiting to be seen by the president. The general goes out and brings some snacks and some water while they wait and charges each of them money for doing so. Later we find out that they've been waiting all day and the general has to leave urgently. So Jennifer Lawrence's character goes back, grabs some snacks and some water, and later finds out that the water and snacks in the White House is free. Now this feels like a throwaway bit, but it's funny because throughout the whole movie, Jennifer Lawrence's character keeps talking about why that happened, and she's trying to figure out why in the world would the general do that to them. And it's pretty obvious that this is just a small commentary on how bloated our military is, asking for money that it doesn't need, purchasing things it doesn't really want. And that's the real genius of this movie. There's so much packed into it, but it's not really trying to slam you over the head with this kind of message that it really wants you to just pay attention to. It delivers those kinds of messages in a very farcical way. And another example of that is how social media works. This impending doom is memeable. No one's really taking this seriously. And that's the thing about satires lately, is that they're too close to home, so they're just not funny anymore. It's kind of what's happening with The Onion, which started as a satirical newspaper, now has headlines that are indistinguishable from the real world. And I think that plays into the reception of this movie, where we don't want to laugh at things that are actually happening. So when it comes to the rocket being memeable, or when the astrophysicist is so hot that he becomes an elf, an astrophysicist I'd like to it becomes way more grounded in reality and adds a different kind of level of, oof, that feels a little bit too real for me. Kind of like how currently there's so many memes about the CDC. This film manages to touch on politics, on our society, and it really brings it all home at the very end, where this family is kind of cut off from the world. They're just sitting together, enjoying each other, not on their phones, waiting for this impending doom, getting ready and making peace for what's to come. This film manages to capture and make fun of the current institutions that exist in our world and how dysfunctional they really are. Like when the president only cares about the comet when it comes to getting reelected, because before she really didn't care. And that's pretty much how politics plays. If it doesn't affect me, then it doesn't matter until it does. And also how the private sector works, where this tech billionaire can actually stop a mission to destroy the comet and create a new plan that will allow him to mine the resources from this impending catastrophic world ender. Even Jennifer Lawrence's character questions why this tech billionaire was in the war room during the launch. And Jonah Hill's character replies with, well, that's because he's a big donor. Now, while visually the movie wasn't anything exciting, I did love the fact that at some parts of the movie, it would get broken up by kind of B-roll of like nature and the world. And it would kind of create this breakaway between scenes of really, really high tension, which gives you this feeling of slowing down and appreciating literally the world around us. And what makes this movie really stand out is because it's a product of its time. A lot of great films always manage to capture kind of the zeitgeist, and this one does exactly that. That's why I think that it's not really doing so well when it comes to critics, because, well, we're living it. We kind of don't want to see it when we want to experience a little escapism. And that's a shame because this movie is really well done, and it manages to show us a message that is very important, but at the same time entertaining us. As a filmmaker, I can really appreciate when a movie tries to deliver a message and executes it well. It's not easy. I don't believe that there's any bad movies. I just believe that some movies don't execute like they wanted to, and their point gets missed. But Don't Look Up manages to do all these things. It manages to get its point across. It manages to be funny, captivating, and engaging. But at the very end of the movie, you kind of do feel a little because, well, this is kind of the world that we live in. And maybe I'd rather watch Disney Plus. But I appreciate a movie that can challenge my thoughts, make me laugh, and bum me out a little bit. This film does a fantastic job by putting up a mirror against our own reality and asks us to look up.